Keanu Reeves walked into his own motorcycle showroom, not to check sales or flaunt his fame, but to quietly observe how his employees treated customers. What he saw left him deeply disappointed. They mocked customers right in front of him, completely unaware that their boss was silently listening. What will Keanu do to restore the core value of respect he built this place upon? And can the lesson he delivers change everything? Where are you watching from? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to hit like and subscribe for more inspiring stories like this one. Let's dive into how Keanu handled this situation and the powerful lesson that transformed it all. The late afternoon sun poured through the tall glass windows of Arch Motorcycle, casting warm reflections on the sleek, polished bikes that lined the floor. Each one stood as a testament to meticulous craftsmanship and bold design, embodying the values Keanu Reeves had poured into this place. The space radiated a quiet sense of pride and purpose, but that serenity was about to be disrupted. Keanu stepped inside, moving with the deliberate, quiet confidence that defined him. His simple attire blended him seamlessly into the backdrop, but his sharp, discerning eyes missed nothing. He wasn't here to admire the machinery or check the numbers. Today he had a different purpose: to observe. To uncover if the respect and passion that had built this place still thrived in the actions of his employees, Ethan and Ryan. The showroom's dignified stillness was suddenly broken by sharp bursts of laughter from the front desk. Ethan and Ryan were chatting animatedly, their voices carrying through the room. But their laughter wasn't lighthearted or welcoming. It was edged with ridicule. A sharpness hung in their tone, cutting through the respectful ambiance like an off-key note in an otherwise perfect melody. Keanu paused, his gaze locking on the duo. His face remained calm, betraying none of the disappointment bubbling beneath the surface. He didn't interrupt, choosing instead to listen. Every word, every chuckle added weight to the unspoken test they didn't even realize they were taking. Today wasn't just another quiet afternoon at the showroom. It was a moment that would reveal far more than anyone could have anticipated. Ethan leaned against the counter, arms crossed, exuding an air of smug confidence. His grin widened as he recounted the scene. "Did you see that guy who just left? He couldn't even figure out where the start button was. What's he doing here? Shopping for memories or trying to relive his glory days?" His voice was loud, dripping with mockery, and it echoed through the quiet showroom, jarring against its otherwise dignified atmosphere. Ryan chuckled along, but his laugh was softer, less certain. "I guess he just wanted a picture? Maybe for Facebook?" he added hesitantly, glancing at Ethan for validation. His gaze quickly dropped back to the bikes in front of him, and his smile faltered for a moment, just long enough to reveal a flicker of doubt. Ethan, however, was too absorbed in his amusement to notice. He laughed louder, slapping the counter for emphasis. "Yeah, exactly. Probably posting it right now. Coolest grandpa on two wheels. Can you imagine?" His tone was sharp, cutting through the room like a blunt knife. Ryan's laughter faded quickly, and he shifted his weight uncomfortably. His fingers tapped the edge of the counter as he glanced around, clearly uneasy. For a brief moment he opened his mouth, as if to say something, but then closed it, choosing silence instead. His hesitation lingered in the air, unspoken but palpable. Across the showroom, Keanu stood near a custom-built motorcycle, his fingers resting lightly on its handlebars. He seemed entirely absorbed in the machine, his touch almost reverent, but his sharp eyes flicked toward Ethan and Ryan, catching every word, every chuckle. His calm expression gave nothing away, but inside, disappointment settled like a heavy stone. This place had been built on values: respect, inclusivity, and a shared love for the craft. But today, those values felt overshadowed by the sharp, careless laughter that filled the room. Keanu's gaze lingered on Ryan for a moment longer, catching the subtle discomfort in his demeanor. Beneath the surface, there was a glimmer of conscience, something Ethan clearly lacked. Keanu didn't move, nor did he speak. For now, he let the scene play out, observing not just what they said, but who they were when they thought no one was watching. Every word and every hesitation painted a clearer picture. Ethan's arrogance was unmissable, but Ryan's uncertainty told a different story, one that Keanu knew wasn't finished yet. The laughter finally subsided, leaving an uneasy stillness behind. Keanu stayed silent, letting the moment hang in the air. This wasn't just another afternoon at the showroom. It was a test, though they didn't realize it yet. And Keanu, ever the observer, was watching everything. The soft chime of the showroom door broke the stillness, drawing everyone's attention. A man in his mid-50s stepped inside, his movements slow and deliberate. He wore faded jeans and a simple button-up shirt, the kind of attire that said more about practicality than style. But there was something genuine about him, a warmth that seemed to follow as he walked toward the far corner where the older bikes were displayed. Ethan, leaning against the counter, smirked. "Here we go. Another one of those guys," he muttered, just loud enough for Ryan to hear. "Bet he's just here to gawk at the bikes he can't afford." Ryan nodded faintly, his eyes following the man as he paused by a vintage motorcycle. "Yeah, maybe," he said softly, his voice trailing off. His fingers fidgeted against the counter, and for a moment he seemed lost in thought. The man stopped in front of the bike, his eyes softening as he took it in. His hand hovered over the handlebars, not touching them, as if the memory it invoked was already vivid enough. "This one," he said quietly, more to himself than anyone else. "It's just like the bike I had when I was younger. Same model, same color." He smiled faintly, the kind of smile that carried both joy and longing. "Bought it after my first job. I'd saved for months." Ethan rolled his eyes, leaning closer to Ryan. "Oh, great. Another one here to relive the glory days," he said, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "What is this, story time at the museum?" The man, oblivious to the mockery behind him, continued, his voice steady but tinged with nostalgia. "I used to ride every weekend with my friends. Best days of my life. There's nothing like the open road." Ethan nudged Ryan. "You hear that? He's not even here to buy, just wants to talk about the good old days." Ryan hesitated this time, his discomfort more visible. His gaze shifted to the man, then to Ethan, and back again. For a moment, his lips parted as if he was about to say something, but he quickly closed them and looked down at the counter, his fingers tapping nervously. Keanu, who had been standing quietly in the center of the room, began moving toward the man. His steps were unhurried, deliberate, his demeanor calm. When he reached the man, he stopped beside him and offered a warm smile. "That's a beautiful memory," Keanu said, his voice steady and kind. "There's something special about those rides, isn't there? Freedom, connection, it stays with you." The man's eyes lit up as he turned to Keanu, a glimmer of gratitude in his expression. "You're right," he said softly. "There's nothing else like it. Those rides, those friends, they're part of who I am." Ethan, still at the counter, frowned. His voice dropped, but his irritation was evident. "What's this guy doing? Hosting a therapy session now?" he muttered, glancing at Ryan for support. "We're here to sell bikes, not talk about feelings." Keanu didn't turn around immediately. He stayed with the man, his attention fully on him. "What kind of bike did you have back then?" he asked, steering the conversation back to the customer. "A CB750, the man said, his voice brightening with pride. "I remember working double shifts just to afford the gas for weekend rides. It was worth every penny." Keanu nodded, his gaze attentive, as if the man's words were the most important thing in the room, but he could feel Ethan's frustration mounting behind him. The energy in the showroom had shifted, and it was clear that the tension was building. Ethan finally couldn't hold back. "So are you planning to ride again, or is this just a trip down memory lane?" His words were sharp, cutting through the nostalgic warmth of the moment. Keanu turned then, his calm gaze locking onto Ethan. His expression didn't change, but his eyes carried a weight that made Ethan hesitate. "Maybe it's both," Keanu replied evenly. His voice was quiet, but it filled the space, commanding attention. "And maybe that's the point." Ethan opened his mouth as if to respond, but the look in Keanu's eyes stopped him cold. It wasn't anger, it was disappointment, quiet but powerful. The kind that made you feel the weight of your actions without a single word of reprimand. Ryan stood silently beside Ethan, his discomfort now impossible to hide. His eyes dropped to the counter, his fingers gripping the edge as if to steady himself. He could feel the shift, the unspoken tension between Keanu and Ethan, and for the first time, he wondered if he had been complicit in something he didn't fully agree with. The customer, seemingly unaware of the brewing conflict, smiled at Keanu. "It's good to know some places still appreciate the stories behind these bikes," he said warmly. Keanu returned the smile, but his mind was elsewhere. The laughter and mockery from earlier lingered in the back of his mind, clashing against everything this place was supposed to stand for. He knew the moment wasn't over. This was just the beginning, and the real test was yet to come. The silence in the showroom grew heavy, as if the weight of Keanu's presence had shifted the air. He stood steady, his calm demeanor unshaken, but his gaze bore into Ethan with quiet intensity. Finally, he broke the stillness, his voice low yet razor-sharp. "Do you think mocking others makes you better at your job?" he asked, each word deliberate, cutting through the tension like a blade. Ethan's smirk faltered, but he quickly recovered, forcing out a chuckle. "It's just a joke," he said, his tone defensive. "Nothing serious. We were just messing around, that's all." Keanu didn't flinch. "Fun at someone else's expense," he said softly, letting the words linger. He stepped closer, his movements unhurried but purposeful. "Do you know what that kind of fun costs? It costs respect. Not just theirs, but your own." Ethan's expression hardened. He crossed his arms, standing straighter as if trying to reclaim his confidence. "Look, it's not like the guy even noticed," he said, his voice tinged with irritation. "Besides, we're here to sell bikes, not coddle every customer who walks in with a sob story." Keanu's eyes narrowed slightly, his calm demeanor unbroken. "You think it's just about selling bikes?" he asked, his voice still steady, but there was a weight to it now, a quiet power that made Ethan shift uncomfortably. "Every bike in this showroom has a story, and every person who walks through that door does too. If you can't see that, you're missing the point of everything this place stands for." Ryan glanced nervously between Keanu and Ethan, his fingers gripping the edge of the counter. For the first time, he seemed on the verge of saying something, but he held back, the internal battle clear in his hesitant movements. Keanu turned slightly, his voice softening as he shifted his attention to Ryan. "It's not too late to ask yourself what kind of person you want to be," he said, his words directed at both of them, but landing harder on Ryan. Ethan, unable to contain his frustration, blurted, "What do you even know about running a place like this?" His voice was louder now, a mix of defiance and desperation, as if he were grasping for control. Keanu's calm expression didn't waver. Instead, he stepped closer, his voice dropping just enough to command absolute attention. "I know because I built this place," he said, his words deliberate, his gaze unwavering. "My name is Keanu Reeves, and I'm the founder of Arch Motorcycle." The words landed like a thunderclap. Ethan's face drained of color, his confidence crumbling in an instant. "Wait, you're the owner?" he stammered, his usual bravado replaced by disbelief. Ryan's eyes widened, and he took a small step back, as if the realization carried a physical weight. His mouth opened slightly, but no words came out. Instead, guilt washed over his face, and he looked down at the counter, his fingers fidgeting nervously. Keanu let the silence stretch, his presence filling the room. When he spoke again, his voice was calm, but carried a profound gravity. "Respect isn't just something you show when it's easy," he said, addressing them both. "It's something you live by, every day, in every interaction. Without it, everything else, your skills, your knowledge, means nothing." The man who had been browsing the vintage bike looked up, his face a mix of quiet surprise and admiration. "It's good to know that someone still understands that," he said softly, his words breaking the tension like a warm breeze. Keanu turned to the man, his expression softening. "Everyone deserves respect," he said simply, "no matter where they come from or why they're here." Ethan swallowed hard, his arms falling to his sides. He looked away, unable to meet Keanu's gaze, the weight of his own actions pressing down on him. Ryan, still fidgeting, glanced at Ethan, then back at Keanu. His voice, barely above a whisper, broke the silence. "I'm sorry," he said, the words shaky but genuine. Keanu nodded, acknowledging the apology, but not dismissing the lesson. "The question isn't whether you can say sorry," he said. "It's whether you'll choose to be better." With that, Keanu turned and walked away, his footsteps deliberate, leaving Ethan and Ryan standing in the silence of their own reckoning. A quiet hum filled the showroom, the soft glow of lights reflecting off the polished motorcycles. A week had passed since the confrontation with Keanu, and everything felt subtly different. The chime of the door broke the silence as a young man walked in, his posture hesitant, His eyes darted around the room, taking in the rows of motorcycles with equal parts awe and uncertainty. Ethan, standing at the counter, noticed him first. He glanced at Ryan, their earlier tension now replaced by a quiet understanding. Ethan straightened his posture, his voice warm and welcoming, as he approached the customer. "Hey there," Ethan said with a genuine smile. "First time in a showroom like this?" The young man nodded, his hands shoved into his pockets. "Yeah, I've been thinking about getting a bike. I don't really know much about them, though." "That's okay," Ryan chimed in, stepping forward. His tone was steady, kind, and encouraging. "Everyone starts somewhere. Let's figure out what works best for you." As they guided the customer through the showroom, Ethan crouched down beside one of the bikes, showing him how to adjust the seat and handlebars for comfort. Ryan walked him through the features of each model, answering questions with patience. Their laughter was genuine now, light-hearted, but never at the expense of the customer. By the end of the visit, the young man stood at the counter, signing the paperwork for his new bike. His earlier nervousness had melted away, replaced by a smile of quiet confidence. "Thanks for taking the time to explain everything," he said sincerely. "I was pretty nervous walking in, but you guys made it easy." Ethan nodded, his voice softer than usual. "That's what we're here for," he said. "Enjoy the ride." As the customer left, the sound of the door closing echoed in the quiet showroom. Ethan and Ryan stood together behind the counter, the weight of the moment settling between them. Ryan broke the silence, his voice thoughtful. "Keanu was right," he said, his gaze fixed on the rows of bikes. "We're not just selling motorcycles. We're selling trust, respect, and everything that comes with it." Ethan looked down for a moment, then back at Ryan. "Yeah," he said softly. "I think I finally get it now." His gaze shifted toward the office upstairs, where he knew Keanu sometimes worked. "I just hope he knows we've learned from it." In his office, Keanu stood by the window, arms crossed loosely as he watched the interaction below. A faint smile tugged at his lips as he saw Ethan and Ryan talking, their postures relaxed but focused. The change in their demeanor wasn't just visible, it was palpable. Keanu's mind wandered back to the early days of Arch Motorcycle, to the long nights spent crafting not just the bikes, but the vision behind them. This place wasn't just about machines. It was about connection, between the past and the present, between people from all walks of life. They've come a long way, Keanu thought, his gaze softening. It's not about being perfect. It never was. It's about choosing to grow. He turned away from the window and walked downstairs, his steps unhurried, deliberate. At the counter, he paused, scribbling a simple note on a small piece of paper before heading to the door. Ryan noticed the movement and called out, "Heading out, boss?" Keanu turned slightly, his expression calm but kind. "Yeah," he said. "Keep up the good work." He stepped outside into the crisp afternoon air, the faint rumble of a motorcycle engine in the distance. As the door clicked shut behind him, Ethan and Ryan moved toward the counter, noticing the note Keanu had left. In his familiar handwriting, it read, "Respect isn't something you give only when it's easy. It's a choice you make every day, in every moment, because it defines not just who you are, but who you'll become." Ethan and Ryan exchanged a glance, the weight of the message settling over them. It wasn't just a note, it was a reminder, a call to action to carry forward the lesson they had learned. As the sunlight streamed through the windows, the showroom stood quiet again, filled with not just motorcycles, but a sense of renewal, a promise of respect and connection for everyone who walked through its doors. If this story resonated with you, we'd love to hear your thoughts. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs a reminder about the power of respect, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this. Your support means the world to us. It's what drives our team to keep creating meaningful content that connects us all. Thank you for being part of this journey, and we can't wait to bring you more stories that inspire and uplift.